Hello everyone and welcome back to the kitchen. If you have gone out for coffee lately, you know that pumpkin spice is back, and that can only mean that Thanksgiving is months around the corner. I love pumpkin pie, but I've never made pumpkin pie from scratch. Thought I'd give it a shot this year. However, my intention was to do it all from scratch, from just taking a raw pie pumpkin and doing whatever you need to do and turn it into pie. But all my trusted sources make pumpkin pie from canned pumpkin. There must be a reason for that, so that's what I'm going to do too. But before I can make pumpkin pie, I have to make a pie crust. If you have been following my adventures with cooking, you know that I have made a lemon meringue pie with a homemade pie crust, but that was a different recipe and this is a different pie. So I'm going to make another pie crust from scratch, hopefully with a little more experience and some better tools and better results. So let's get started. I'm going to be using a food processor to be doing all the heavy lifting for the crust today. Starting off with 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of sugar. And we just mix until it's well combined. I have 3 tablespoons of chilled lard. I'm going to add this to the flour, salt, and sugar mixture and then combine it until it has the texture of coarse sand. All the big lumps are gone and it's got a more or less homogeneous texture. I have 4 tablespoons of chilled unsalted butter and they have been cut into 1/4-inch cubes. I'm just going to scatter them across the mixture and then we will pulse them and evenly distribute the butter in the dough. When I'm done, the butter pieces should be no larger than the size of a pea. It doesn't say to do this in the recipe, but I'm just going to scrape the sides of the food processor. I had some dry stuff accumulating on the edge and I don't want that. Looks like the butter has been chopped up to much smaller than a pea size. I think we're good. I'm going to turn this dough out into the medium bowl and press it into a dough ball. The recipe says to sprinkle 4 tablespoons of ice water over the dough mixture. That'll help us form that ball. It says to fold the dough and press into the bowl. And if I need to, I can add 1 more tablespoon of ice water. We're almost there, but I think I do need this additional tablespoon of ice water just to complete the process here. I'm not exactly sure how to do this part, but it says to flatten it into a disc and then place it in some plastic. Well, I can do this by hand for sure, but it's going to be sticky and I don't want to warm it up that much. So I'm going to flour my hands just to make this a quick process. Now I put the dough into the refrigerator for 1 hour. They say that you can put it in the refrigerator for up to 2 days, but if you do that, then you have to let it come up to temperature until it's pliable again. I don't want to mess with that, so 1 hour exactly is what we'll be doing today. The dough has been sitting in the refrigerator for an hour and it's time to roll it out. I've laid a pastry mat down on my work surface, and that's mainly to give me an idea how big I need to make this circle. We're going for 12 inches wide. And then I put a sheet of parchment paper on top of that And now I'm going to lightly flour the surface of the parchment paper. I can still see chunks of butter in my dough. I think that's a good thing. Put that right in the middle. And I'll just go and add a little bit of flour to the pile of dough here. I have another sheet of parchment paper I'm putting on top of the dough. At least that's what it said to do, but I think this is going to make it harder than it needs to be, but we'll try it. And then roll it out into a 12-inch circle. Now, it looks like the bottom parchment paper is bunching up. I think I'm going to flip this upside down and try it from that aspect. I've exposed more of the dough. I'm going to add just a little bit of flour to the dough and proceed rolling. We're most of the way there, just need to roll it out a little bit more. Trying to keep it even. This looks pretty good to me. Now this part kind of makes me nervous. I have to transfer the dough to the pie plate. This is a 12-inch disc of dough, more or less, and a 9-inch pie plate. Sticking a little bit to the parchment paper, but what if I just press it in here? Get it to stick to the glass instead of the parchment paper. Maybe that's better. It's a little bit sticky on this side, but we're almost done. All right. Got it. I don't have too much extra dough here. I think that's a good thing. I need just to trim this a little bit. There's a thin part I'm just going to patch up with this trimmed dough. Same over here. I think it got a little stretched when I was transferring it over. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with this so far. Next step is to flatten the dough against the rim of the plate. I'm using this giant fork here. And I chose this fork because the tines are wide and there's a decent space between them. And I thought it just looked more pie-like. I think that looks pretty good. It's a little ragged over here, but I can live with that. Now this goes back in the refrigerator for 40 minutes to cool down, and then after that it goes in the freezer for 20 minutes. The pie shell has been in the refrigerator for 40 minutes, followed by another 20 minutes in the freezer. It is now fully chilled, and we'll proceed with the next step, and that is to take a piece of heavy-duty foil, about 24 inches long. We're going to double that up and then place the foil in the pan, center it and fold it over the edges so we're protecting the edge of the pie crust. And then I'm taking my pie weights. This is looks like a round piece of chainmail. I'm just going to put this in the middle here. The oven has been preheated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to bake this pie shell on the lowest rack for 25 to 30 minutes. While the pie shell is in the oven, I'm going to make the pumpkin pie filling. Once again, I will be using the food processor to make the filling, starting with 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin. When I first opened this, I thought, wow, that smells really good. Then I took a bigger sniff. Not so good. Next up, 1 fully packed cup of dark brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of ground ginger, 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. I have never grated nutmeg before, but I'm assuming I just do this on a microplane. Well, that was surprisingly easy, and 1 little nutmeg seed or whatever that is, a nut, I don't know what it is, more than enough for 1 teaspoon. 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Mix until well combined. That looks like it's coming together gradually, but I want to scrape it off the sides just to give it a little boost. I'm happy with that. Smells a lot better now too. Now I'm going to transfer the pie filling to this saucepan over a medium-high heat until it starts to sputter and simmer, and we'll cook it until it's shimmery. They say to stir this constantly. This is darker than what you would expect from a finished pie, but I think that's because we haven't added the eggs or the milk or the cream yet, so we'll get that color, I hope. Ooh, it's definitely sputtering. It says to cook this until it's thick and shiny. I don't see such a transformation yet, but it's sputtering all over the place, so I almost feel like I should turn the heat down a bit. This seems thick enough to me, I don't know. I'm going to turn it off. Time to check on the shell. I took the pie weights and the aluminum foil off of the crust. It's looking pretty good, but I'm going to partially bake the crust for about 5 minutes to get it ready for the pumpkin filling. 5 minutes have passed by. I pulled the pie shell out of the oven. I increased the temperature of the oven to 400 degrees in preparation for baking the pie. And now we've got the food processor back. I'm going to mix 4 eggs in the food processor. And yes, the food processor is still full of pumpkin pie filling, and that's okay because we're just making more of the same. The pumpkin pie filling is back on the heat. I am going to add 2/3 cup of milk and 2/3 cups of heavy whipping cream. I'm going to whisk this all together and bring it to a simmer. It's just starting to simmer. I think we're about ready. I'm going to slowly pour the simmering pie filling into the egg mixture through this feeding tube while this is running. I don't trust myself. I'm going to use a funnel. Hopefully it'll work. I'm going to transfer this into the hot pie shell. I would like just to pour it in there, but I think it would make a big mess. So I'm using a ladle for now anyway. Now the recipe said that we might have more filling than what the pie shell will allow, and that's okay. We bake this for about 5 minutes and the filling will settle down, and then we can add the rest of the filling. So this is going into the 400-degree oven for 5 minutes. I just checked on the pie. I don't think that filling has settled one bit, so I'm not going to add any more to it. I am going to bake this for 20-25 minutes until the filling is firm, well, kind of like Jell-O, and maybe a couple of cracks or something. And then we will cool it on this cooling rack and let it cool for at least an hour. Welcome back. I pulled the pie out of the oven. The crust did get a little darker than I would have liked, but I think it'll be okay. I should have put a foil collar around the edge. We also have, or at least we used to have, I don't know where it is. There's like a crust saver overlay that you could put on a pie plate. Anyway, I didn't do that. I just left it the way it is, and it got a little bit dark. But as my wife said, nobody likes the crust anyway, so maybe it won't matter. Also, the pumpkin pie filling itself is darker than I thought it would be. Maybe if I had used light brown sugar rather than the dark brown sugar it called for, I would have achieved the color that I expected. But I think it'll be delicious. I hope so. I'm anxious to try it. But first I have to make some whipped cream because that's the best part of the pumpkin pie. I think I'll use about 1.5 cups of heavy whipping cream. That'll probably make quite a bit of whipped cream. But that's fine because you can't have too much, right? And then I'll put a little bit of sugar in there, or a little bit or a lot, but probably 3 tablespoons. And let's just whip this up. I think I'm going to put just a drop of vanilla in there. Those look like stiff peaks to me. Okay, let's get a slice out of this thing. It's sliced easily, and I was able to pull it out of the pie without incident. And normally, the first pie slice is a disaster, so I'm happy with that. And that looks like a pretty decent slice of pumpkin pie to me. I have never put a lot of artistry in my dolloping skills. Normally, I just like to cover the whole thing with whipped cream and dig in. But I'm going to try to make this pretty. Yeah. Not bad. The only thing left is to taste it. That's pretty good pie. Even the crust is good. Of course, I haven't had the extra brown part, but the bottom crust is excellent. Okay, yeah, it's easier to go to Costco and pick up a $5 pie or whatever they charge, but this is delicious. I'm quite happy with this. Nothing wrong with the Costco pie. I love Costco pie, but this is delicious. So many times after I finished cooking a recipe, I have a little bit of regret about the amount of time I spent doing it, but I have no regrets here. This is delicious. I will put the recipe in the description below. Thanks for stopping by.